back. Today marks 1 year since U.S. armed forces completed their withdrawal from Afghanistan. As the Taliban seized control of the country, chaotic and deadly scenes unfolded at the airport. We all remember these images, thousands rushing to get on the last flights out of the country. For more now, we are joined by NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel, thanks as always for joining us. I mean, 1 year since that last flight left. How do you reflect right now on this U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, from a military standpoint, it was something of a disaster. We'd already planned to leave, and we had plans to leave from Bagram Air Base, but we gave it back sometime before we made the decision to actually pull out, leaving us only the airfield inside Kabul in a very restricted and overpopulated area from which to leave. That made evacuation extremely difficult, and the chaotic scenes that you see resulted from that. I think perhaps the biggest lesson from a military standpoint is that, first of all, if you're going to evacuate, you got to hold to the plan that you've already created to go from the most convenient airport and not something that's like the airport we left, Karzai Airport in the middle of Kabul. The second thing is that you have to continuously upgrade your plans as the situation changes, and most people are not convinced that the military did that. And as a result, we lost the people that we did in the maelstrom of violence that took place around the airfield. We were always going to leave. The question is how we were going to leave. And in the end, we chose the least efficient and most violent way to leave, which didn't work out very well for anybody, Joe.
Let's look at where things are right now. The humanitarian situation in Afghanistan has really deteriorated over the last year. Many are living in extreme poverty. Women's rights have also taken a giant leap backwards. I mean, if you compare where things are now with where they were more than 20 years ago, are they the same? Are they worse? How do you compare?
Well, they haven't changed very much, and you have to focus on the fact that Afghanistan itself hasn't changed a great deal in hundreds and hundreds of years. We had a theocracy back then. We've got a theocracy now. Afghanistan is terribly corrupt. The West has delivered something on the order of $750 million in humanitarian aid as of just a month or so ago. And there's no confidence that the majority of it has gone to assist the people of Afghanistan. A lot of it gets siphoned off by the government in Kabul, and the rest of it, well, not the rest of it, but a significant percentage of the rest of it gets siphoned off as it goes down the chain to get to the people. Most of the country is rural and poor, and it's going to stay that way, Joe.
Quite recently, we know a U.S. strike in Afghanistan killed the top al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri. He was one of the key architects behind 9/11. The Taliban insisted they didn't know that he was living in the capital. In your mind, where do American-Afghan relations stand right now, and how do they look going forward?
Well, first of all, he was living in the middle of Afghanistan, of Kabul, in the most affluent area around, surrounded by people who were in the government. And so it's impossible to believe the assertions of the Taliban government that, in fact, they didn't know that he was there. The second thing that's important is to recognize that in the agreement that the United States made with Afghanistan before we left, the government in Kabul was going to ensure that people like al-Zawahiri did not move into Afghanistan. There's no way that we can believe anything that the government says from now on in. Our interests are represented by an office in Kabul from which we make decisions on how to distribute aid principally. We continue to try to convince the Taliban that they ought to adhere to the kinds of democratic principles to which we adhere, but not only is there no guarantee, we have some degree of confidence it'll never happen. So a year after we've left, not a great deal has changed from decades, if not centuries ago, Joe.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, always appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.